Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Joree Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Joree is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Joree.
Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Joree Rose. I wanted to talk today about mindful parenting for a couple of reasons. September is now that everyone is back in school, but it's also Self-Care Awareness Month. And so much of the work that I do with my clients is helping them how to show up as the best version of themselves in all of their relationships, including their relationship to themselves, to their partners, to their spouses, to their boyfriends or girlfriends, as well as their children. I think mindful parenting is such a necessary practice because we all need to learn the skills to be present, to be patient, to be calm, to respond and not react, to be able to listen compassionately with an open heart, all of which is part of a parent's intention, but isn't always so easy to execute. When we get caught up, when we're just running through the hamster wheel of our day-to-day life, when we get triggered, and even in the best case scenarios, it's still really hard. And so I want to go over some tips and tools today of what it really means to practice mindfulness in regards to our parenting. And here's one of the best things is if you as a parent are able to develop your own practice, what you're doing is two things actually. One is you're giving yourself the skills to be more present, like I said, to not be reactive, to be more calm, but you're also then role modeling to your children how they can do it for themselves. Because I get a lot of calls from parents who want me to work with their kids, but unless they're in an environment in which these tools are being supported, it's really hard for the kids to stick to these practices. And I know that we as parents all want our kids to develop the skills of empathy and compassion and loving kindness and how to be focused and pay attention and how to be able to calm themselves down and be resilient. But if we're not able to role model that for them, then we're doing them a disservice. So it's been a while since I've taught these classes in person, and these are soon going to be online courses. So if this is something that you're interested in, want more of, then please be sure to stay tuned because, like I said, I get a lot of requests for this work because it's just really needed. You know, being a kid these days with social media, with pressures in school, with what we see going on in our country, whether it comes to politics or gun violence, they're growing up with a lot more stressors than I think many of us ever did. And now more than ever, the tools to manage their stress and anxiety, the tools to manage what to do with social media, the tools to manage their own emotions, how to regulate when they're feeling really anxious and how to know how to stay focused and calm at school, how to be able to calm their brain down, to be able to study in the right way that their brains can learn, to understand the brain-body connection, to help fall asleep at night and stay asleep, what to do when you're worried and not believe all your thoughts. And like I said, we as parents don't always know how to do this for ourselves, but we often say to kids, relax and calm down, without teaching them how. Or we will often say to our kids, just focus and pay attention. But again, we don't always teach them how. Or we say, oh, just go lie down and go to sleep. But we haven't taught themselves how they can slow down, quiet their mind, quiet their body so they can actually fall asleep peacefully. So I'm here to teach you as parents what you can do to start developing this framework in yourself and then therefore be able to role model it to your children. So some of you, this might be a refresher, but for some who are tuning in for the first time, when I say mindfulness practice, what does that even mean? I mean, mindfulness is a buzzword you hear a lot, but I think it can be easy to miss the actual meaning in a way that you can integrate into your daily life. So to be more mindful is to be present. Okay, so if we're not present, where are we? Well, our mind is always wandering. In fact, neuroscientists say that our mind wanders at least 47% of the time. So when it's wandering, where does it go? Well, it wanders to the past where we get stuck on rumination and we spin and say, oh, if only that didn't happen, if only, if I could do that over again. Or we even get stuck on really positive things. Oh, last weekend was so awesome. I just want to be back on that vacation versus back here at work or back at school. So we get stuck in the past, but we also get stuck in the future. And that's where our anxieties live, all those fears and unknowns and what ifs. And we get pulled in either of these directions because our minds are like a hyper puppy. Our minds are going to wander all over the place. And so we've got to train the mind how to come back and be present. So mindfulness is about being present. Mindfulness is also about allowing and accepting all your emotions, thoughts, sensations, distractions, whatever's arising in the present moment, to exist without judging it, without resisting it, without denying it, without ignoring it. Because the more that we're in resistance, judgment, or denial, and the more we just don't want to face what is, ironically, the bigger that thing becomes. Paradoxically, when we can allow what is arising to exist, and we're allowing it in without the judgment, which is not easy to do, but it's possible. When we can allow it in, it actually gets smaller. And the easier it becomes to be more resilient and to deal with all those curveballs that life throws at us. So to be a mindful parent is to first develop this practice within yourself, how to notice when you're being reactive, how to notice when you're just spinning through your whole day and you're not being really present. And when you get really reactive, having the tools to calm yourself down, to be able to respond to what your child is saying versus raise your voice at them when you're asking them to be quiet. That's never a helpful tactic. And once you develop these skills for you, like I said in the beginning, you'll be better able to role model to them when they need it the most. Because the last thing you want to do is be a do as I say, not as I do parent. Kids aren't going to buy that these days. They're going to see right through it. And if you're asking of them to shift their words or their communication or their tone of voice or the language that they're using or their behaviors, then the best way to get them to do that is for you to role model it to them. So this is probably so much more than I can say in this session. So I'll probably be doing multiple different episodes around this, but I wanted to give you guys a framework today, a pretty basic framework for you to begin to develop this practice. And again, now that it's September and everyone is back in school, the routine has begun. And with that routine comes the craziness and comes the busyness and the countdowns to the long weekends and the school breaks, so we can just slow down. And the thing is this is just the pattern and the cycle and the rhythm of life. So you want you to always having to wait for that next moment to slow down. I want you to be able to find it where you can get it, because it's within those moments of slowing down. It's within those moments of finding your breath that you're going to be able to find the peace. Because no matter what's arising, what trigger, what stress, what distraction, what school deadline, what multiple times you're carpooling in the day, what traffic you're sitting in, what homework assignment you have to run out last minute to go get supplies for, whatever it is, those aren't going away. So to practice the tools to be able to deal with whatever's arising will help you with no matter what is arising. I often say, mindfulness is helpful whether you're sitting in traffic or dealing with cancer. You know, the triggers are going to be different, but the tools are the same. It's about how do we allow what's arising to exist without judging it. And I want to say one more thing is to allow and accept what's arising doesn't mean you have to like it. And this is one of those things that my clients have a hard time always accepting, because they don't want to have to deal with the things they don't like. Well, neither do I. But, you know, the temper tantrum is never going to come at a good time. And raising your voice to calm down the temper tantrum is not likely going to stop it. Always, you know, giving a consequence to a negative behavior without understanding what's driving the behavior, what emotion is causing the outburst, you're just going to get more negative behaviors and a lot of resentments built up the more consequences you get without there being too much positive effect for future behaviors to be different. But I'm not going to get into discipline today. That's a whole nother topic. But I did want to point out, we don't have to like what's arising to find a way to deal with it. And in fact, so much of life is difficult. So we can't pick and choose the things that we want to focus on, or we can't pick and choose the things that are going to come up, but we can pick and choose how to manage them, how to focus our mind's attention on them, and how to be able to allow and not always be in such judgment or anger or frustration or annoyance or irritation or impatience, because that ultimately is going to affect our relationship with our kids. And that's going to role model to them how to deal with whatever life comes up. So one of the first things I do want to say about, practicing mindfulness with kids, and I've been teaching this for years. I have a couple of books on the topic. You can find more information on my website, and I'll have some links to connect you. But mindfulness can be taught to kids at a really young age. In fact, I used to teach these tools to kids who were 3 years old. And one might say, oh, a 3-year-old couldn't grasp this, a 3-year-old couldn't get this. And let me tell you, they absolutely can. So as a parent, no matter how old your kids are, it's never too early to start talking in a language that explains what it is that you're doing, by role modeling the behaviors that you want to see in them, and by demonstrating to them and even naming as you're doing it what you're doing. Kids get more than you realize, and don't sell them short on what they're able to grasp, because when they see you frantic and on your phone all the time and not paying attention, they're picking up on that. So we want to be able to not show them that, they can't get what we're teaching them. So one of the first practices in mindfulness is being able to connect with your breath. And why is that? Well, the breath is going to be the anchor that draws you back into the present moment. So remember how I said, like, your mind is like a hyper puppy and the puppy's just going to run all over the place? Think of your breath like the leash to pull the puppy back. So you have awareness of, oh, look, there it goes. That's your mind wandering. And then you have to pull on the leash to bring it back. Now, even the tone in which I just said that out loud was one of acceptance, was one of observing what was happening rather than judging. If we are constantly in judgment, then it puts us right back into the cycle of reactivity. So it's got to be awareness with compassion to notice what's arising, to be able to help learn how to respond to it rather than that reaction. So the breath is the foundational key to this practice. And, when I was learning mindfulness and meditation practice, the going story that I heard from almost all my meditation teachers and mindfulness teachers was that you had to meditate for 20 to 40 minutes a day to be able to develop the skills and the tools to start practicing mindfulness. And that didn't really work for me. At the time, I was a mom of young kids. I didn't have another 20 to 40 minutes in my day. And if I did, I likely wasn't going to spend it meditating. So I started meditating in my car. So what did that mean? It was a time when I was by myself, when my kids weren't in the car, and I would turn down the radio. I would not be on the phone, and I would simply pay attention. I would notice what was going on around me. I wouldn't stress out if there was traffic. I wouldn't judge myself if I was running a few minutes late. I would honor and accept that I was doing the best that I could that day. But I would breathe. Now, of course, keep your eyes open. But I would intentionally take in deep breaths while paying attention to the beauty around me. I live in a really beautiful area, and there's always blooming trees and rolling hills. And even on the sides of the freeway, there's flowers. And we so often stop paying attention to what's around us because we're just on autopilot, and we just go and we go and we go, and we're on that hamster wheel. So driving is a great opportunity to start implementing some of these tools to give you the foundation of this practice. And I would notice when I would intentionally breathe in my car, when I would arrive to wherever it is I was going, I would feel more peaceful. I'd feel more calm. I'd feel more prepared for wherever it is I was at. I would feel a little less anxious about what was next, what was next, what was next. So wherever you can find time in your day, when you're at a red light, this is a great opportunity. In fact, there's an acronym, a mindfulness acronym that says STOP. The S stands for slow down. The T is take a breath. The O is observe, and the P is proceed. Again, great thing you can teach your child. So you can practice this together even with them in the car, to stop every time you get to a red light or a stop sign. What you're doing when you're practicing this kind of breathing is you're regulating your nervous system. You're calming down the sympathetic nervous system, which is where you get the fight, flight, freeze reaction anytime you're stressed or overwhelmed or anxious. And that breath is going to activate the rest and digest part of your brain, which is the calming part of your brain, to say, I'm okay. There's no reason to worry or stress out right now. So as a foundation of this practice, one of the things that I like to suggest to parents, if you're doing this with your kids, because sometimes if you tell your kids to take a deep breath, they're likely going to take a breath that sounds like Darth Vader, and that's not going to be very calming or relaxing. So you want to give them a visual of breathing in through your nose, like you're smelling a really beautiful flower, or something like chocolate chip cookies fresh out of the oven, or a pie, or something that is really pleasing to you. Maybe it's a favorite perfume, but taking that nicely slow, deep breath in through your nose, and then exhaling out through your mouth as if you're blowing a bubble. And not like a bubble like you're chewing gum, but like bubbles, like a little jar of bubbles that we play with as kids. If you're gonna blow the bubble too quickly, it's just gonna pop, right? If you just, that bubble's gonna pop, and it's not gonna even get off the wand and float across the yard. So that's a visual to help your kids understand what it means to take a mindful breath. But also, you can even try, if they're lying down at night, put a little stuffed animal. I like to use a little Beanie Baby, put it on their tummy, and tell them to just watch the stuffed animal and see what happens. So what's gonna happen is naturally it's gonna rise up and down. And they are simply observing their breath. And in that observation, they're inherently connecting with it. So it's a really great way to trick kids into breathing slowly by having them observe their breath. You can even have them put their hand on their tummy or on their chest. They can feel their diaphragm expanding and contracting. So I just wanted to say a little bit about the mindful breathing portion, because I'm going to go into the tools of being a mindful parent, but that is a foundation that as you begin to develop, you'll be able to use the language with your kids with what you're doing. So let's dive right in. So the first step that I like to talk about in what it means to be a mindful parent is respect your child's sovereignty. So what does this mean? This means parenting to the kid you actually have, not the one you wished you had or hoped you had or thought you had, but actually parenting to the child you have, and recognizing that your children are different, which means extra work for you. You will have to parent differently to your different children because they're going to require something different. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And more importantly, what worked yesterday is likely not going to work today and likely not going to work tomorrow. That's the being present part. You got to stay really present with what is, so you can be sure to be responding to their needs given who they are and what they're needing in that moment. So to respect your child's sovereignty is a way of being present with them and understanding that they have their own inherent wisdom, and we don't know them as well as we think we do. Now, of course, we know our children. Hopefully you're paying attention and understand their needs, but we also want to be teaching them how to trust and develop that sense of self. And sometimes we think we know better, but we don't always know better. And when we come from that place of thinking we know better, we're actually failing to connect with them, which is not an intention of being a mindful parent. So, to be this mindful parent requires attention and energy, concentration, consciousness, intentionality, and most importantly, patience. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to uncover the inherent uniqueness of our children. like I said, seeing them for who they actually are, their true nature, their sense of self. And when you can respond to your child in honoring their true nature, they're going to have a better ability at trusting in themselves who they are. And so what we need to do in order to get there is to let go of all of our expectations of what we thought it was going to be like and what we hoped it was going to be like. Because if we're stuck in our expectation and our hopes and dreams, not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes if we're too stuck in those ideas, now given where they come from, they're just a thought. So it's believing a thought, but it's believing a thought based on a hope. And when we do that, we fail to be present with who's in front of us. And that also impacts understanding what our own personal triggers are, because if you have a child, you'll understand that they activate any of our unresolved triggers. And we tend to react to the triggers that is coming up in us, and we tend to put it on them when it sometimes even isn't even about them. So we need to move beyond the veils of our own experience to become fully present and open. And when we can do that, then we are creating the space for our children to fully experience themselves in the present moment. So in embodying this wholeness, we want to remain at our center, and we want to be able to act skillfully and responsibly in being in alignment with our intentions. Because, I hear a lot of parents who, I'm not judging, because it's hard, but they just get so frustrated, and they're screaming at the end of the day, or even in the middle of the day. And I once had a client who took one of my classes, and she said, my mindfulness practice is really great up until the moment the kids get in the car. And at that point, it just goes out the window. And so we want to be able to develop these tools that we can draw upon them whenever we need, especially when it's hard. So mindfulness, I want to remind you, is not a philosophy of doing. Rather, it's a way of being. It's a way of showing up. It's your presence. It's the quality in which you're responding and communicating. It's the quality in which you're being curious around who your child is, what's going on with them, how to role model for them to be compassionate and empathic, to try to understand what they're feeling sad or upset of what's going on behind that, rather than just trying to solve it or fix it. Because as parents, we can't solve or fix most any of it, but we can be there to support them through it. So just think for a moment about who your child or children are and what their true nature is. And just think about, how is that different than yours? And, or maybe even consider how you thought they would be. And ask yourself, am I parenting to who I thought they would be or hoped they would be? Or am I parenting to who they actually are and what they need? So, the reminder throughout all of this is the continuous practice is to take a minute and just breathe. Because if you are staying connected to your breath, then you'll get a better chance of getting out of your head, out of those stories, out of those expectations, out of those judgments. Because the emotional brain is what takes over when we get stressed and anxious and overwhelmed, and it shuts down our prefrontal cortex, which is where we have the logic, reason, rationality, decision-making, communication. So that breath is going to keep that prefrontal cortex activated, calming down the emotional brain. So take a minute and just breathe whenever you feel yourself getting activated or triggered. So another way of, again, mindful parenting being this dual practice of developing your own practice while role modeling that of your kids is to pay attention to our bodies. And this is the part of mindfulness that's all about body awareness. And, our bodies have inherent wisdom within them, but we need to learn how to slow down and pay attention to what our body's telling us, because we just have habits that we operate out of, and we have filters through which we see things. And if we're not conscious and aware, we might be seeing things through the wrong lens that's giving us an inability to see what is. And when we can slow down and when we can pay attention to our intuition, we can pay attention to even our breathing patterns, can give us information that we need to know to be able to be more present. And, this is something to be able to teach kids as well. And to teach kids to trust their bodies, to trust their intuition. And, I sometimes get parents who have kids, maybe the parents are going through difficulty in the marriage or a pending divorce, and the kids are sensing something is wrong. And the kids ask the parent, hey, what's going on? And the parents say, oh, no, it's fine, it's fine. Well, what the parent is doing in that moment is actually telling the kid, I've heard that your body's giving you these cues, but no, don't trust them. Trust my word. And that's not always the best advice because the body doesn't really lie. The messages are in there, and we want to be able to trust our own intuition, pay attention to our own bodies while teaching our children how to do the same. So again, mindful parenting having this dualistic meaning of learning the skills and then role modeling them. But we can't teach what we haven't experienced experientially and experienced directly. So, just as I gave the examples of how to, when you're driving, how to slow down, you might want to think about practicing a body scan meditation. And you can find this on my website. And a body scan is a systematic relaxation technique where you connect your breath into your body. And whenever I guide a body scan, there's always gratitude in there for the different body part. But basically, it's starting with your feet. On the inhale, breathing in while tightening the muscles of your feet, holding it for a moment in awareness. And on the exhale, relaxing. And if you do this all the way from your feet up to the tip of your head, you will have relaxed your body, put your mind into your body, and you've also taught your body how to calm down, paying attention to any pain or sensation inside your body and using your breath to help heal that. So you can do this at bedtime with your kids as a way to help them fall asleep. It's a really beautiful practice to get them to calm down. And, one of the key for using this body awareness, aside from our intuition and trusting what our gut is telling us, is to use the body as a way to slow down. And because, we are always on the go and we don't notice very much of what's going on around us. So to slow down, and this goes right into the next tool of parenting with your senses. It's a full sensory experience being a parent. And that, the old joke of parents have eyes in the back of their head. But we often aren't always paying attention. And mindful parenting is the ability to see our children clearly, listen with an open heart, and touch with love and intention. And again, this takes time and commitment and patience. And, we do so much for our kids. We manage their schedules, we carpool them around, we help with their homework. But we don't always take the time and attention to just be, to slow down for that hug before school, or to lie in bed at night for an extra few minutes to rub their back. And, one of the things that I think we are all guilty of is being connected to our devices so much. And it's really easy to say, oh yeah, I'm listening, but not look up and not put the phone down and not make eye contact. And if we're not doing that, then we're not going to expect we shouldn't expect our kids to do any different when they're on their device. So we've got to show with our body language that we are engaged. Because this whole idea of multitasking is a fallacy. Our brains actually aren't designed to do anything more than one thing at a time. So, set time aside to listen to your child talk about their day at school. Ask them, when is the best time for us to have that conversation? Some kids need to have some downtime before they're ready to communicate about their day, but create the space to listen. And a lot of parents want to fix or solve, like I said, what's going on with their kids, but they can't fix and solve what's happening with their friends. They can't fix and solve the teacher that they're struggling with, or the homework that, the child may be getting a bad grade on. But what they can do is be there to support them through it. And I'll have a whole nother episode on just communicating with your kids, because that's a whole episode in and of itself. But being able to use your senses as a way of being mindful to connect with your kids is so important, because if we're not enabling all of our senses as a tool to being present, then we're offering only a bit of ourselves. So, just think about when you drop them off at school in the morning. One of the little games I like to play with myself is that I pay attention to what they wore to school that day. And so when I pick them up as they're walking out, I recall if I remembered what they wore to school. And that was a reminder for me in the morning to slow down, to be intentional, and to connect. And sometimes I remember and sometimes I don't, and I don't judge myself on the times I don't. I just use that as a reminder to be more present next time. So also be aware of, times of transition. What are you doing to slow down and be intentional? To pause and give them that hug or kiss, or that intentional, touch on the shoulder, or the eye contact. And another way to practice being mindful, especially as a family, is mindful eating. And you'll have to tune in for one of the mindful eating exercises that I guide. And the traditional practice is to use a raisin. But these are really wonderful ways to get into your sensory experience, to slow down with your sight, with the sounds. Yes, even foods make a lot of sounds, with the smells, with the touch, with the texture, with the taste, with the color. And using that as a reminder to be with what's in front of us. So moving on to the next area of developing empathy and compassion. Now, I once had a parent call me because their kid wasn't being so nice on the playground and was being a little bit too competitive, and it wasn't creating a lot of good friendships for him. And they wanted me to teach him empathy and compassion. But this was a young child who had no idea what he felt about things, and he didn't understand his own emotions. And so you got to understand that in order for us to be empathic and compassionate, we've got to be able to be in tune with our emotions. And that means learning about how to be in tune with our emotions, how to name them, how to give them an experience, how to give them space to exist, how not to be only favorable on the emotions that we want, like the happiness or the joy or excitement, and how to also give room and space for the emotions that are more difficult, like the anxiety, the sadness, the depression, the anger, the frustration. And, so as you as parents can be able to role model this ability to name the emotions as they're arising for you, or name for your child, wow, I'm noticing you seem really frustrated right now. I wonder, what's behind the frustration, and let's see how we can just sit with the frustration for right now. Let's just allow it to exist, give it some room. Not always easier. It's always easier said than done. It's not always easy to do. But when we can have reflective conversations in which we give room for the child to help understand their own experience, then we are now creating deeper connections, and they feel like we see them. And, one of the most important emotions that, maybe not emotions, but experiences we can do around developing greater empathy and compassion is to practice gratitude. And gratitude is a really beautiful antidote to frustration and anger and stress. And, this is, again, an entire other topic, so I'm just going to say just a moment about it. That, gratitude can calm down our brain, allowing us to not focus on just the negative, because we do have that negativity bias, and help us to be able to see what's really arising. And so, again, role modeling this within yourself so you can role model it for your kid. And understand that all of us, especially our children, just want to be seen, heard, and validated. And when we give room for all their emotions to exist, and we give room for the gratitude and empathy to get developed, then we are developing compassionate people, which our world so desperately needs right now. And our kids are going to have a much better time understanding this when we are role modeling this in ourselves. So, as a reminder, don't always just try to fix the problems, but sit with them. That's really the meaning of compassion, is to sit with and meet them where they are at. And that ability of them feeling seen, heard, and validated is going to strengthen your relationship. It's going to make you feel better about being able to manage what's going on with them. And they're going to learn how to trust you as well as trusting in themselves. So this is going to be a two-parter, and so I hope that this first piece of mindful parenting was helpful for you. And tune into the next one, which will give you the rest of the tools around how to be a mindful parent. What does it mean to be able to get unstuck from our thoughts and our reactivity, and really how to have some good communication skills when it comes to mindful parenting. So I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to tuning with you guys next time.
To continue your journey forward, find Joree Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joreerose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.